To my new subscribers, welcome. To my regulars, welcome back. The following is for entertainment purposes only.
In 1933, the average American family spent 25 cents to feed 4 people dinner. Not because food was cheap, because they knew things we have completely forgotten. Number 18 on this list was so effective that General Mills spent a fortune in advertising to convince housewives to stop doing it. Number 7 creates a texture that no appliance on the market today can replicate. Scientists at Cornell just confirmed it. These 25 kitchen skills kept families alive when banks collapsed, crops failed, and the government handed out ration books instead of answers. The food industry does not want you to remember any of them. If you did, you would walk past half of the products in your grocery store without blinking. Before we start, hit that subscribe button. What you are about to learn might change how you cook forever. Let us count them down. Number 25, bacon grease jar. Every Depression-era kitchen had a tin can or mason jar sitting on the back of the stove, filled with saved bacon grease. Your grandmother never threw away a drop. She would fry her bacon on Sunday morning, then carefully strain the hot fat through cheesecloth into that jar, removing the burnt bits to create clean golden fat that kept for weeks on the counter. No refrigeration needed. That grease went into everything. Green beans got a tablespoon for flavor. Cornbread batter got 2 tablespoons for moisture. Eggs fried in it tasted richer than anything cooked in vegetable oil. A pound of bacon cost 22 cents in 1935. Saving the grease meant stretching that investment across a dozen meals. The American Heart Association told people in the 1960s to throw it all away and switch to margarine. But a 2020 study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found no significant association between saturated fat intake and heart disease. Meanwhile, the trans fats in that margarine were confirmed deadly. We threw away flavor and decades of kitchen wisdom because of science that turned out to be wrong. Number 24, flour sack clothing and kitchen towels. This was not a cooking skill exactly, but it made everything in the kitchen possible. Flour came in 50-pound cotton sacks printed with patterns, and your grandmother washed those sacks, bleached them, and turned them into dish towels, aprons, and straining cloths. By 1939, flour companies like Pillsbury and Gold Medal actually started printing prettier patterns on their sacks because they knew women were choosing brands based on the fabric. A 50-pound sack cost about $1.50. You got the flour and the material. Those homemade cloths were tougher than anything you can buy at Target today. They lasted years. They strained broths, wrapped rising dough, dried dishes, and lined bread baskets. The resourcefulness was staggering. Nothing was single use. Nothing was disposable. Every object in that kitchen had a second life. Number 23, water bath canning. Your grandmother could preserve an entire summer garden in a single weekend. She would pick tomatoes, green beans, peaches, and cucumbers at peak ripeness, pack them into sterilized mason jars, and process them in a boiling water bath. Rows of jewel-colored jars lined the cellar shelves like a savings account you could eat. A bushel of tomatoes cost about 50 cents in 1934. Canned properly, that bushel fed the family through February. The jars were reused year after year. Only the lids needed replacing. Every woman in town knew the timing by heart. 35 minutes for quart jars of tomatoes, 10 minutes for jelly. The USDA published safe canning guidelines, and women followed them with the precision of pharmacists. We buy canned tomatoes at the store now for $2 a can and think nothing of it. Your grandmother would have called that madness. Number 22, stale bread pudding, sweet or savory. Nobody threw away bread, not a heel, not a crust, not a single dried out slice. Your grandmother saved every scrap in a cloth bag hanging from a nail in the pantry. When enough had collected, she made bread pudding. Stale bread torn into chunks, soaked in a mixture of eggs, milk, sugar, and vanilla, baked until the top turned golden and the center set into warm custard. A pinch of cinnamon if she had it. A handful of raisins if the budget allowed. The whole dish cost maybe a nickel to make and fed 6 people dessert. Some women made it savory, with cheese and onion, stretching leftover bread into a main course. The Depression taught a generation that staleness was not waste. It was an ingredient waiting for a purpose. Number 21, vinegar as a cleaning agent and cooking tool. A gallon of white vinegar cost about 10 cents, and it replaced half the products under the kitchen sink. Your grandmother scrubbed counters with it, rinsed vegetables in it, and used it to keep her cast iron from rusting. But she also cooked with it in ways we have completely abandoned. A splash of vinegar in the poaching water kept eggs from spreading. A tablespoon in pie crust dough made the pastry flakier by inhibiting gluten development. Vinegar in bean soup cut the cooking time and reduced gas. She added a capful to the rinse water when washing greens to kill bacteria. Decades before, bagged salad companies started charging $3 for pre-washed lettuce. One product, dozens of uses. We replaced it with 15 specialized bottles under the sink, and we wonder why our grocery bill keeps climbing. Number 20, rendering lard at home. Your grandmother did not buy Crisco. She made her own cooking fat. When the family butchered a hog or bought pork trimmings from the butcher for a few cents a pound, she would cut the fat into small pieces, melt it slowly in a heavy pot, and strain the liquid through cheesecloth into crocks. The result was pure white lard that made the flakiest pie crust in 3 counties. Nothing else comes close. The secret is that lard has large fat crystals that create layers in pastry dough, trapping steam as it bakes. Crisco was introduced in 1911 and marketed as modern and clean. Procter & Gamble spent millions telling women that homemade lard was old-fashioned and unsanitary. It worked. An entire generation stopped rendering. But professional pastry chefs today will tell you lard makes a superior crust. We forgot because an advertising campaign told us to. Number 19. Potato water for bread. When your grandmother boiled potatoes for supper, she never poured that starchy water down the drain. She saved it in a jar and used it to make bread the next morning. The starch in potato water fed the yeast and gave it a head start. Bread made with potato water rose faster, stayed softer, and lasted a day longer before going stale. Science is simple. The dissolved starch acts as food for the yeast and also helps hold moisture in the finished loaf. Your grandmother did not know the chemistry. She just knew her mother did it, and the bread turned out better. A loaf of homemade bread cost about 3 cents to make in 1936. Store-bought bread was 8 cents. That 5-cent difference mattered when your husband brought home $9 a week. Number 18. Mock apple pie. When apples were too expensive or out of season, your grandmother made apple pie without a single apple. She used Ritz crackers. This is not a joke. Ritz printed the recipe on the box, starting in 1934. The crackers were broken into a pie shell, then doused in a syrup of sugar, cream of tartar, and lemon juice, and baked until golden. The cream of tartar created an acidic tang that mimicked apple flavor, and the crackers softened into something that genuinely resembled cooked apple slices. Blind taste tests have consistently shown that people cannot tell the difference. General Mills and other apple growers later discouraged the recipe because it proved you did not need their product. A box of crackers cost a dime. A pound of apples cost 15 cents when you could find them. Your grandmother fed her family pie either way. Number 17. Stretching ground meat with oats. 1 pound of ground beef cost about 12 cents in 1935, and it had to feed a family of 6. Your grandmother's solution was oatmeal. She mixed 1 cup of dry oats into every pound of meat, along with an egg and diced onion. The oats absorbed the meat juices as they cooked, swelling up and creating bulk without changing the flavor. A meatloaf that should have served 3 now served 6, with leftovers. The oats also kept the meat moist. Modern food scientists call this a binder and extender. Your grandmother called it Tuesday. This trick showed up in home economics textbooks, county extension pamphlets, and handwritten recipe cards passed between neighbors. We abandoned it when meat got cheap, but anyone who has made meatloaf with oats knows the texture is actually better, tender, moist, and it holds together on the plate. Number 16. Cold water pastry method. Your grandmother made pie crust with ice water, and the temperature was not negotiable. She would cut lard or butter into flour with 2 knives or a pastry cutter, never touching the dough with warm hands longer than necessary. Then she sprinkled ice water, 1 tablespoon at a time, until the dough barely held together. The principle was simple. Cold fat creates steam pockets when it hits the hot oven, and those pockets become flaky layers. Warm fat melts into the flour and makes a tough, dense crust. No food processor, no stand mixer, just cold hands, a light touch, and the patience to stop mixing before you thought you should. Every church social, every county fair, every Thanksgiving table was judged by the crust. And the women who won those blue ribbons all did the same thing. They kept everything cold and never overworked the dough. Number 15. Eggshell coffee. Your grandmother made coffee with crushed eggshells mixed right into the grounds. She would crack breakfast eggs, rinse the shells, crush them, and stir them into the coffee grounds before brewing. The calcium carbonate in the shells neutralized the bitter acids in cheap coffee, producing a smoother, less harsh cup. A pound of coffee cost about 25 cents. When that was a significant expense, you made sure every pot tasted as good as possible. This trick was especially common with percolator coffee, which tends to over-extract and turn bitter. The eggshell solved that problem with 0 additional cost. Scandinavian immigrants brought this technique to the Midwest, and it spread through church basements and farmhouse kitchens across the country. We buy expensive, low-acid coffee beans now for $12 a bag. Your grandmother got the same result with scraps she was about to throw away. Number 14. 1 pot depression soup. There was no recipe. That was the point. Whatever was in the kitchen went into the pot. A bone from last week's roast, a wilted carrot, a potato going soft, a handful of dried beans, an onion, water, salt. Your grandmother simmered it low and slow on the back of the wood stove all morning, and by noon it was soup. The bone gave body. The starch from the potatoes thickened it. The long simmer extracted every bit of nutrition from ingredients that individually were worth almost nothing. This was survival cooking at its most fundamental. No measuring, no timing, just instinct built from years of watching her own mother do the same thing. The modern slow cooker tries to replicate this, but it misses the essential part. Your grandmother tasted and adjusted constantly. A little more salt, a splash of that saved bacon grease. The pot was never the same twice, and it was never wrong. Number 13, soaking beans overnight. Dried beans were the protein backbone of the Depression-era diet. A pound of beans cost 5 cents, and it provided as much protein as a pound of meat, which cost 12 cents. But your grandmother knew you could not just throw them in a pot. She soaked them overnight in cold water, sometimes with a pinch of baking soda to soften the skins. By morning, the beans had doubled in size and would cook in half the time, saving precious fuel. The soaking also broke down oligosaccharides, the complex sugars that cause digestive distress. Your grandmother did not know the word oligosaccharide. She just knew that soaked beans did not give the family gas the way unsoaked ones did. She would drain the soaking water, add fresh water, and simmer with a ham bone or a piece of salt pork. Modern canned beans cost $1.50 and contained sodium levels that would have horrified her. Dried beans, soaked and cooked properly, taste better and cost a fraction of the price. Your grandmother did not spray her lawn with chemicals. She ate it. Dandelion greens picked young in early spring were washed, torn, and dressed with hot bacon grease, vinegar, and a little sugar. The hot dressing wilted the greens slightly, cutting the bitterness and creating a warm salad that tasted nothing like the bitter weeds you imagine. Dandelions are more nutritious than spinach, higher in vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. Your grandmother knew they were free. She also made dandelion wine, dandelion jelly, and dried the roots for a coffee substitute. We spend billions on lawn chemicals to kill a plant that is more nutritious than most things in the produce aisle. That is the kind of irony that would have made your grandmother shake her head. Number 11, seasoning cast iron with daily use. Your grandmother did not buy non-stick pans. She had cast iron, and she seasoned it by cooking in it every single day. Each meal added another microscopically thin layer of polymerized fat to the surface, building up a slick black coating that released food better than any Teflon. She never used soap on it, just hot water and a stiff brush. Then she dried it on the stove and rubbed it with a thin coat of lard. That skillet got passed down through generations, each year smoother and more non-stick than the last. A cast iron skillet cost about $1 in 1935 and lasted forever. We throw away $15 non-stick pans every 2 years when the coating starts flaking. Your grandmother's skillet is probably still in someone's kitchen right now, still working perfectly 90 years later. Number 10, sugar syrup preservation. When refrigeration was unreliable or non-existent, your grandmother preserved fruit in heavy sugar syrup. She packed peaches, pears, and berries into sterilized jars, poured boiling sugar syrup over them, and sealed the jars tight. The high sugar concentration created an environment where bacteria could not survive, the same principle behind honey lasting thousands of years. A 5-pound bag of sugar cost about 25 cents. Combined with free or cheap fruit from the backyard tree, she could put up enough preserved fruit to last all winter. They were spooned over biscuits, stirred into oatmeal, or eaten straight from the jar as a treat. We buy fruit cups in plastic containers now, packed in high fructose corn syrup. Your grandmother's version was real fruit in real sugar, and it tasted like summer in January. Number 9, ash cake and hoe cake on open flame. Before reliable ovens reached every kitchen, your grandmother could make bread with nothing but cornmeal, water, salt, and a fire. She mixed cornmeal into a stiff dough, shaped it into flat cakes, and cooked them directly on a hot surface. A cast iron skillet, a hoe blade held over coals, even a clean spot raked in the fireplace ashes. The outside crisped, while the inside stayed dense and slightly sweet from the corn. This was the original American bread, older than the country itself, passed down from Native American cooking traditions through generations of Southern and Appalachian families. A pound of cornmeal cost 3 cents, no yeast, no rising time, no oven, bread in 15 minutes from 3 ingredients. When everything else failed, there was always hoe cake. If your family had access to a cow or could buy fresh cream from a neighbor, your grandmother made butter at home. She let cream sit until it reached room temperature, then shook it in a jar or churned it until the fat separated from the buttermilk. She washed the butter in cold water, pressed out the remaining liquid, and salted it for preservation. The leftover buttermilk went into biscuits and pancakes. Nothing was wasted. Homemade butter cost essentially nothing beyond the price of cream. Store-bought butter was 28 cents a pound in 1936. That mattered, and the buttermilk byproduct was itself a valuable ingredient. One process, 2 products, 0 waste. The efficiency of Depression-era cooking was not accidental. It was engineered by necessity. Number 7. Hand-beaten biscuits. In parts of the South and Appalachia, your grandmother made beaten biscuits by folding and pounding the dough with a rolling pin or the flat side of an axe for 30 minutes straight. No baking powder, no baking soda, just flour, lard, salt, and brute force. The repeated folding created hundreds of thin layers, and the beating developed just enough gluten to hold them together while keeping the crumb tender and flaky. The result was a firm, crisp biscuit, completely unlike the soft, fluffy kind. It cracked when you broke it open, revealing a layered interior that no modern machine can duplicate. Food scientists at Virginia Tech have studied the structure and confirmed that the hand-beating process creates a unique lamination pattern that stand mixers and food processors cannot reproduce. The mechanical action is too uniform. Human hands vary pressure and angle with each stroke, creating irregular layers that trap air differently. This biscuit was served at every proper table south of the Mason-Dixon line. It took real labor to make, and that labor was part of the point. Number 6. Cooking with a wood stove. Your grandmother did not have temperature dials. She had a wood stove with hot spots, cool spots, and a personality she learned over years of daily use. She knew that the back left corner ran hotter than the front right. She knew that adding a piece of hickory changed the flavor of whatever was in the oven. She could hold her hand inside the oven and tell you the temperature within 20 degrees based on how long she could stand the heat. Bread went in after the fire burned down. Pies needed a hotter start. Beans simmered on the cooler side all day. This was intuition at a level most modern cooks cannot comprehend. No timers, no thermometers, just accumulated knowledge and a hand that had been burned enough times to know the difference between 350 degrees and 400 degrees. Number 5. Leftover vegetable broth. Your grandmother saved the water from every boiled vegetable. Potato water, bean water, corn water, the liquid left from blanching greens. She poured it all into a jar in the icebox, and by the end of the week, she had a rich, nutritious vegetable broth that cost absolutely nothing. That broth became the base for soup, the liquid for cooking rice, and the foundation for gravy. Modern broth costs $4 a carton. Your grandmother made it from garbage. The vegetable water contained vitamins, minerals, and starches that we literally pour down the drain every night. A 2019 study in the Journal of Food Science confirmed that blanching water retained significant concentrations of water-soluble vitamins. Your grandmother did not need a study. She just knew that the water tasted like something, and something was never wasted. Number 4. Rewashing and reusing tin foil. Aluminum foil was expensive in the 1930s, and your grandmother treated it like reusable equipment, not disposable wrap. After covering a dish, she would carefully peel the foil off, wash it gently with soap and water, smooth it flat, fold it, and store it in a drawer. A single sheet could be reused 5 or 6 times before it tore beyond usefulness. This seems extreme by modern standards, but the principle was universal. Nothing that still had function was thrown away. The drawer full of smoothed, folded foil sheets sat next to the drawer full of saved string, flattened paper bags, and rubber bands removed from delivered newspapers. Every one of those items had a future use already planned. Number 3. Hay box cooking. This might be the most brilliant lost technique on the entire list. Your grandmother would bring a pot of stew, beans, or oatmeal to a full boil on the stove, then immediately transfer the sealed pot into an insulated box packed with hay, old blankets, or newspaper. The insulation held the heat, and the food continued cooking for hours without any additional fuel. A pot of beans that would normally need 4 hours on the stove could be boiled for 20 minutes, transferred to the hay box, and left alone all day. By supper, the beans were perfectly tender. 0 fuel cost after that initial boil. During the Depression, when firewood was scarce and gas cost money, this technique saved families real dollars every month. The USDA actually promoted hay box cooking in extension bulletins during the 1930s. Modern thermal cookers and vacuum flasks use the exact same principle, and they sell for $60. Your grandmother did it with a wooden crate and a horse blanket. Number 2. Sour milk baking. Your grandmother never threw away milk that had turned. Sour milk was an ingredient, not waste. When milk went off, lactic acid bacteria converted lactose into lactic acid, creating a natural buttermilk substitute. She used it in pancakes, biscuits, cornbread, and cake. The acid reacted with baking soda to produce carbon dioxide, giving baked goods a light, tender crumb and a subtle tang. A quart of milk cost about 10 cents. Wasting even a cup was unthinkable. Sour milk pancakes were actually preferred by many families because the acid made them fluffier than fresh milk versions. Modern recipes call for buttermilk, which costs twice as much as regular milk. Your grandmother got the same results from milk she would have otherwise lost. What we call spoiled, she called ready to bake with. Number 1. The perpetual stock pot. The single most important kitchen skill of the Depression era was the stock pot that never went empty. Your grandmother kept a heavy pot on the back of the stove, simmering low, day and night. Every bone, every vegetable trimming, every scrap of meat too small to serve went into that pot. Chicken carcasses from Sunday dinner, onion skins, carrot tops, celery leaves, parsley stems, the tough outer leaves of cabbage. Everything contributed. She would ladle out broth as needed for soup, gravy, or cooking liquid, then add water and fresh scraps to keep it going. Some families kept the same pot running for weeks, the flavor deepening and concentrating with each day. The broth was liquid gold. It contained gelatin from the bones, minerals leached from the vegetables, and a depth of flavor that no store-bought product has ever matched. A single chicken that cost 25 cents produced meat for one meal and broth for a week. The perpetual stock pot was not a recipe. It was a philosophy. Nothing ends. Everything transforms. Every scrap has value. That pot represented everything the Depression generation understood about food and survival. It fed families when the cupboard looked bare. It turned nothing into something. And when we let that pot go cold, we lost more than a cooking technique. We lost a way of thinking about food that kept an entire generation alive. Try one of these this week. Save your bacon grease. Soak your beans overnight. Stop pouring vegetable water down the drain. Then come back and tell me your grandmother was not just being old-fashioned. Tell me she knew exactly what she was doing. Share which skill you are going to try first in the comments. I want to know if the perpetual stock pot gets more love than the hay box. Because these were not just Depression-era tricks. They were a complete operating system for feeding a family on almost nothing. The food industry spent decades making us forget. Now you remember.
This plant here is my #1 survival crop, and this little patch is going to make me buckets of these delicious edible roots. This is the easiest crop in the world to grow, in my opinion. These plants are called sunchokes, sometimes called the Jerusalem artichoke, which is odd because it's not from Jerusalem and it's not an artichoke. They're basically a sunflower that produces potatoes. They're not really potatoes, but they're used very similar. They're starchy and crisp, so you can slice them up and make fries, or slice them thin to make chips. You can boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. So anything you can do with potatoes, you can substitute sunchokes instead. And each plant can produce between 5 and 10 pounds of these roots, making them higher yielding than potatoes, and requiring less water and fertilizer. This crop is actually a North American native wildflower, and the Native Americans have been making great use of it for thousands of years. They cultivated it from its wild variety that had smaller roots into a variety that has roots much bigger than this. It was wildly popular with the first settlers. It was probably eaten at the first Thanksgiving, and it was made very popular in Europe throughout the 1700s. Once you plant them in a spot, it's hard to get rid of them. They can survive drought, flooding, and they'll produce big yields in the poorest soil at my house. Not only that, but year after year they actually help improve the soil. I planted these ones just over a month ago. They've put on a lot of growth, and they're only about half height right now. Just like potatoes, sunchoke roots will start sprouting when they're stored. So a gardener I know had too many starting to grow, and he gave me some, and I just planted them here to offer a little bit of shade to my rabbitry. Not only shade, but it's a great crop to grow for your rabbits. They'll eat the leaves, the stalks, the flowers, and the roots. The way I grow these is I'll dig a hole and place the root fairly deep, like 4 to 6 inches deep. Then I'll fill up the hole and I'll cover it in about 3 inches of wood chip mulch. That helps me not have to water it through the hottest part of the year. It's routinely 95 to 100 degrees right in this alley, and I haven't had to water them in weeks. So that's why I use mulch with your plants. They'll push right through all the mulch just like the potatoes do through the hay, and next year that whole alleyway is going to be a sunchoke forest. Now I almost forgot to add, when they're raw they'll give you gas like you wouldn't believe, so be sure to cook them really thoroughly. This is because they have a prebiotic fiber called inulin. Now inulin is in all sorts of health food stores and it's wildly expensive, but you can get it free from this sunflower that grows in the poorest soil you have. So if you do grow them, just cook them real well before you eat them.
Was there an old world ancient secret to growing enormous vegetables without the use of chemical fertilizers? Electroculture is a technique that involves harnessing and utilizing electromagnetic energy to enhance plant growth and improve crop yields. Some even say this was the secret to the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the ancient wonders of the world. Electroculture works by placing antennas in the soil near where crops are grown. The idea was first introduced more than 120 years ago in a paper that explained that rapid germination could be caused by electrifying seeds. In the late 1770s, a man named Bernard Germain Etienne began some experiments watering plants with water that had been impregnated with electricity. He noticed the trees growing vigorously in fall, when typically they would start to lose their leaves.
Another odd yet brilliant way the Amish keep their eggs in pristine condition for what feels like forever: oiling. Now you might be thinking, wait, oiling? Like you're prepping an egg for a massage? Sort of. The Amish use mineral oil, a simple, harmless substance, to coat their eggs, and the results are incredible. Here's how it works. Eggshells, as I mentioned before, are full of tiny little pores that let air and all sorts of unwanted bacteria inside. Over time, this is what causes the eggs to spoil. But with oil, those pores get completely sealed. It's like putting the egg in a protective bubble that blocks out oxygen and keeps it from turning into that stinky, sulfur-scented science experiment we all dread. Now, if you've never heard of this method, you're not alone. It seems wild at first. I mean, most of us probably wouldn't think to slather our groceries in oil, and for the record, don't try this with your milk. But the Amish have known about it for a long time, and even modern homesteaders are rediscovering this technique. Mineral oil is cheap, readily available, and doesn't spoil the eggs. It just keeps them nice and cozy.
So check this. Tartaria, interesting tartars. They would put copper in their water, and they would water their plants with copper water and had great success. This was studied by Victor Schauberger. Then he noticed if you put zinc, which is making brass or another conductor, it would enliven the sick fields.
There's a guy in Japan started raising tomato plants with pressurized carbon dioxide. Plants breathe CO2 and not oxygen. His tomato plant grew faster than normal. When it was 2 years old, it was 16 feet tall and produced 900 tomatoes. They moved it to a shopping center and built scaffolding to hold the branches up. They said, this thing might produce 10,000 tomatoes. This is one tomato plant. It ended up growing 40 feet tall and producing 15,000 tomatoes off one plant. It was a cherry tomato plant, but tomatoes were coming off baseball size off of his.
Teaching you how to grow carrots at home. Just grab a carrot and cut the top off, place it in water and watch it sprout. The top part will be the first to sprout, and soon you'll see roots form at the bottom of the carrot. Once you see those little roots, you can plant in soil and watch your growth from there. But just take note that this method will only yield seeds that you can then plant to grow real carrots. These are the seeds.
So in my family, we love onions. We use them for cooking a lot. And what we do is when we have that onion and you cut off the end, we make sure to cut off so that there's a little bit more left, because then this we put into this kind of little bowl with water without letting it get over top of this, and then we let it grow until we get this nice green, and especially making sure we get some nice little roots down here. Then we take this outside, because Norma's just hanging out in our kitchen. We take it, we put it into a 2-inch deep little well in whatever area of your garden you want. We cover that up, we water it, and then we let that grow. And it's actually really phenomenal, because we're actually not buying onions anymore, because when we do this with each of our onions, we can get anywhere between 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 onions out of the onion that we were using, and we're still getting enough onion for what we're actually cooking. So it's a total win-win. So let me show you one that has already been growing. It's kind of pushing up a lot, tremendous. And see those right there? Those are the onions coming up, because that is actually from just one piece of onion that we had planted, and that's how many onions we're getting in return. How awesome is that?
So you're done cutting your celery. Don't throw this out. You can actually grow celery from this repetitively. All you have to do is peel out the outer layer. So now I've peeled off the outer layer, and then I cut around the edges just so that it fits in a shot glass that I fill up with water. Add it beside the already existing celery that you have, and within a few days you're going to have more celery. Just keep cutting and keep eating.
10 stages of genocide: classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, perception, extermination, denial. We weren't crazy. We weren't making things up. We weren't selfish. We weren't killing people. We weren't hurting others. We weren't lying. We weren't just being stupid. We weren't ignoring the actual science. We were vilified. We were fired from our jobs. We were excluded from society. We were discriminated against. We were mocked. We were blamed. We were thinking critically. We were right. The real pole shift is manipulation to truth, when narrative control changes hands. They kill the prophets to increase the profits. Not only is reality boring, it doesn't often make sense. Conspiracy theories, on the other hand, are far more entertaining, and they tie everything together. They actually make more sense than the truth. That's why they're far more popular. I love it when I wake up in the morning and my conspiracy theories turn out to be facts.
Now in this video, Trump talks about the advancement from 5G to 6G. Listen closely to what he says.
So we're into 6G now, I just 5G. I was a leader on 5G getting that done, and now they're up to 6.
Let's do it again.
What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin?
To see deeply into somebody's skin. Trump is not lying. But let's break this down because here's where it gets interesting. Now, all these chemtrails that we see in the skies, you know, the chemtrails that they outright just show us, that they make, these chemtrails are filled with conductive metals like barium, aluminum, strontium, and graphene. When you breathe these into your body, these metals are now in your bloodstream. They are in you. Because this air is conductive, they have the ability to heat up the atmosphere. They have the ability to create extreme weather because it's all directed energy. And because this air is conductive and it is tuned to your DNA, they can manipulate you. I don't think that's what people understand. This is a spiritual warfare. They're attacking your soul. Now I need you to realize that you are in their energy grid system. The chemtrails are a part of their energy grid system. Their conductive metals that are in the air responds to the towers. And that same ionized air is in you, which means they now have power to your nervous system. They have the power to alter with your genetic life code, your DNA. These AI towers will literally be able to see you as a bioelectric silhouette because you are in their energy grid system. Does that make sense? These AI towers will have the ability to pinpoint your ass. Now enough of the fear. How do you prevent this? Detox. And I mean detox from everything they have. Fruits, veggies, eat clean. Everything you consume, make it clean. You don't want to be their electric target. You want to be a clean temple. Fast. Exercise, sweat, get in the sun. The sun will literally heat up and kill all the parasites in your body. The sun will eat anything synthetic in your body. Ground yourself, reduce the EMF charges. But real quick, back to what Trump said. Does it give you a deeper view into somebody's skin? Yes, he's not lying. In early 2026, MWC in Barcelona, this is an event center for like AI, satellites, and bullshit. They majorly announced the rollout of 6G. It's coming. Now you see it. 6G's on rollout. Don't stress it. Just clear the temple within. That's it. Peace and love always.
I'm saying these things out of love for my fellow humans. The shot is not medicine. It is an intro-body nano network administered through. What they're finding in people are not blood clots. It is self-assembling, self-replicating nanotechnology. Lipid nanoparticles that have been modified on a molecular level, wrapped in pegylation, polyethylene glycol, one of the components that can be used to make hydrogel. The lipid particles are modified to be more sensitive to heat and frequency. When placed in the human body, they become excited from the heat, and that excitement, they vibrate. With that excitement, magnetofection is created, and the particles slowly drift towards each other. Hence, self-assembly. This intrabody nano network is the first step to make the human body a device linked into the Internet of Bodies. The shot also changes human DNA, rendering the person a GMO owned by a corporation. This allows for the system to freely harvest psychological, biological, genetic, and physiological data from the individual without their knowledge or permission. They are now products owned by the corporation that gave them the poke. At the top of all of those corporations is BlackRock and Vanguard. Information is now the new gold, and it will be the foundation for the new financial system coming, the CBDC. The next step is a quantum dot tattoo that will slowly release quantum microdots, chips, into the human body, individualizing and authenticating all data for each individual. This is part of a transhuman agenda being initiated upon the population without their knowledge by global elitists working primarily through the WEF, the WHO, the IMF, and other.
Atom bomb? What atom bomb? According to underpaid US scientists, the atom bomb exploded in 1945 like this exactly, when new projectile rings made of 30.5 kilograms heavy uranium-235 were mechanically pushed about and then again mechanically pressed into 6 target rings. So, 30.5 kilograms of uranium-235, thrusted via the wolfram carbide disc projectile and the steel back of the projectile, which in turn accelerated through the cordite propellant charge, and through 4 plutonium-beryllium initiators, which were crushed over the plug by the projectile rings. All of this apparently started the magical nuclear procedure. This happened 600 meters above ground as the bomb itself dropped with 324.7 meters per second. Why these new projectile rings did not drop by themselves due to gravity is not quite clear. Do you understand? It's so simple. Shove, throw, or push 9 uranium-235 projectile rings supported by exploding cordite towards 6 uranium-235 target rings and press them into a wolfram carbide pipe. Sleeve, disc, plug, hence nuclear fission, and then boom! And don't forget, you absolutely have to tighten the lock nut on the nose of that steel brace. So why has it taken the Iran 20 years to do this? In short, because all of the above is complete nonsense. Stupid, idiotic, lying propaganda. It doesn't work. Metal in contact with metal, be it gold, silver, lead, iron, any kind of uranium, including uranium-235, does not split exponentially and certainly doesn't explode initiated by polonium or beryllium, not even when it is compacted mechanically and definitely not suddenly. So, the atom bomb dropped on the 6th of August 1945 from an altitude of 9,255 meters in 57 seconds and detonated precisely at 600 meters exactly as shown here. Would it have dropped for 2 seconds more, it would have hit the ground and would have been destroyed, and would have never exploded. Absolutely believable. Let's take a look at the places in which nuclear explosions allegedly took place. Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Does this look like something where an explosion with a temperature of 1 million Kelvin happened? Looks more like Dresden in 1945 to me. The windows in the center of the Bank of Japan building are broken, not the outer ones. A bomb strong enough to sweep away brick constructions, yet too weak to bend trees. Yeah, sure. More of a case for Oliver Zumann and his trolls of Vienna. Eyewitnesses stated that something between 200 and 400 B-29 bombers flew over the city between 2 and 4 a.m. and dropped 1,500 tons of napalm bombs. Another interesting story is the one about German physicist Klaus Fuchs, who emigrated to England in the 1930s and participated in a highly confidential development of an atom bomb. He was also in charge of the very unsuccessful Manhattan Project, slipped informations to the Russians and landed in jail for 14 years. And so, Stalin, just like the Americans, was boldly able to work on his version of the fake atom bomb, knowing that the enemy was just bluffing. I'll just skip the idiotic part about Einstein and his E equals mc square. That stuff about matter converted into energy that brings forth a total of energy according to the mass multiplied by the speed of light times square. He's just another part of this dumbing down game, like all the other so-called scientists. For decades, the US and the Japanese governments have spent more than hundreds of millions of dollars to understand how the radiation of the nuclear bomb harmed the people of Hiroshima or Nagasaki. One version is that these bombs were never dropped. And where has it disappeared to? The radiation. Even stranger is the fact that the Big Five in the UN, those with permanent veto powers, all happen to be governments authorized to have nuclear weapons. But a rogue who thinks evil, I suppose. Please take a look at the B-61 atom bomb that has just been made steerable by the Americans for $1 billion, but still has immobile tail fins. Another fun fact, it's absolutely safe to take a ride around in a hangar full of atom bombs for publicity. Not at all dangerous, especially when it's old, overweight, and poor-sighted military doing it. The conclusion? In order to cover up the truth about nuclear bombs, the US government created CCD, Civil Censorship Detachment, right after the occupation of Japan. CCD was confidential. No one was to know that there was censorship in Japan. Anyone who took photos of the devastation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or claimed that the bomb was a fraud, was simply incarcerated or executed, because they were disturbing public peace. Anyone who cannot see the connection to the contemporary events in our days, anyone who believes in the official explanation of 9/11, the moon landing, or the assassination of John F. Kennedy, obviously has no trouble in believing that the collision of two small uranium plates made a giant explosion of 100 million degrees Celsius possible that disintegrated everything within a radius of several hundreds of kilometers. To put it simply, it's an enormous deceit to keep people in fear and compliance, and to keep some of the not-so-bright leaders of this world at bay by expressing an exaggerated military dominance that doesn't even exist. Stay alert, and don't let them fool you.
The Canadian government is evil, and Canadian doctors are lying to your face, saying there's no drugs, there's no treatments, there's no options to fix your disease other than to kill yourself. with medical assistance in dying, and you believe it. You accept that there's no hope, and you invite all your friends and family over to do one of those little goodbye, celebration of life, bye, toodaloo. And there you are now laying on your bed, and the doctor's pumping your body with midazolam and propofol. Basic surgery drugs that paralyze your body, but your brain is fully aware. And there you are, laying on your bed as your family stands around you, so stupidly, innocently saying, "Oh, they look so peaceful. We're so grateful to be Canadian for this as an option." Yeah, but your lungs are filling in with fluid. You're drowning, you're suffocating, and you scream, "Help, I can't breathe." But nobody can hear you, nobody can see you because you're paralyzed. And the doctor turns around to reassure all your friends and family, they're just having the most peaceful death experience. It's all a lie. And guess what? There were treatments. There were options. You just weren't told about them. How do I know? Because they tried to kill my wife. They told her there was no hope. She had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and they left her with nothing. And she was dying from lack of treatment. Her only option was to kill herself. Until, dun-dun-dun-dun, we came to the United States where they saved her life again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And here we are today. She is finishing off her last chemotherapy treatment. 3rd-line chemotherapy. This cancer has come back 3 times in just under 3 years. But they keep fighting. They don't give up. They don't take the hope away. They don't offer death. Even right now, they're working on getting her into another new drug trial study to keep saving her life over and over again, and again, and again, and again, because they don't do that in Canada. They take everything away from you. You're no good to them. Why should they spend money on you to save your life? You're probably not even paying taxes at that point anyways. You're so sick. They want you dead. So don't believe it. If they ever try to take your hope away, leave the country. Go to Mexico. Come here to the United States. Go overseas. There are treatments available. You just got to spend the money, unfortunately. You got to have money. But guess what? You already paid into the system in Canada. You paid it your whole entire damn life. That was your insurance. They were supposed to be there to save you. And then when you needed them, they took all that hope away. That's Canada. That's Canada's healthcare system. They are evil and they are lying.
Cannibalism might seem kind of gruesome, and kind of is. I'm going to give you a little background of what got me to this position to run this bill. Back in 2019, I heard that Washington State was starting to do human composting, and that disturbed me. I wanted to address this because what I didn't want to see is bags of compost with human bone fragments. I want to stop it getting into the human food supply. I was on a plane this summer, watched a video of some food show, and the 3 contestants tasted the food and they had to guess what was in it. It was some kind of a sausage, and one of the options they told these people that was in the food was human flesh.
Can you tell us the 3 secret ingredients that might be found in this amazing sausage that you made for us today?
The 3 secret ingredients that might be found in the sausage are fish liver, human flesh, or shark.
Are those really the 3 ingredients?
Yeah, fish liver, human flesh, or shark.
Is this?
Is that a problem?
Is it?
And there's a stigma surrounding this.
We're good. We will clear it. We're good. Come on, Brian, please.
All right. Yo. Thank you, Kev. Thank you very much. All right, Joe. Fish liver, shark,
or human flesh.
God help you, it better be shark.
All right, 2, what do you think it's going to be?
Shark 2.
Shark?
The liver is like too obvious, and I don't think it's human flesh, so I think it's shark.
Chef Keith, can you tell us what is the secret ingredient in this dish?
Yes, I'm afraid you're both wrong. It is human flesh.
No.
Whoa.
That's not okay. That's not all right.
You know, the way our society's going and the direction we're going, this is going to be normalized. There's only one state in the union that it is illegal, cannibalism is illegal, and that is Idaho.
was doing nothing as an FBI informant because he wasn't an FBI informant. And this is just another big lie meant to do nothing else other than excuse Donald Trump's extensive and deep ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody already knows that Jeffrey Epstein was considered to be Donald Trump's best friend. We already know that Paolo Zampoli, the guy responsible for bringing Melania to the United States and introduced her to Donald Trump, was a close personal friend and business colleague of Jeffrey Epstein. In all likelihood, and according to a Trump biographer, Jeffrey Epstein slept with Melania Trump. After all, Trump did tell us Epstein was always stealing his girls. Epstein's fingerprints are all over Donald Trump, both personally and politically, and little Mike Johnson got too mouthy when he was talking to CNN. He let too much information out there, and now he's trying to walk it back, but it's too late. He can't do that. The cat's out of the bag now, thanks to Mike Johnson, the tiny little elf on the Zionist shelf. And even though we all know full well that Donald Trump is heavily implicated in this Epstein saga, his Q-tard supporters will still tell you that he's a superhero. He was joining forces with the white hats within the deep state to fight the child traffickers, pretending to become Jeffrey Epstein's best friend so they could take down the Democrat pedophiles together. That's the hoax. Donald Trump is the Epstein president, and he's not the only guy in that White House to have close, deep, and personal ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Howard Lutnick was Jeffrey Epstein's neighbor. Paolo Zampoli, the Epstein-connected Guido that I mentioned just a minute ago, he was given an executive branch job by President Trump, apparently as a reward for procuring Melania. I don't know. Trump had Pam Bondi and Kash Patel commanding a bunch of FBI agents to work around the clock, destroying whatever Epstein evidence they still had on hand. These are the people that are running the cover-up. They're not exposing or informing anyone. Donald Trump is the guy who was in office when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, or more likely got whisked away to Israel so he could live out the rest of his natural life in the world's biggest pedophile safe haven. The place where the Trump administration loves letting pedophiles abscond to.
Okay, this is a special alert. This coming Thursday, the ASIO Bill number 2 is up for debate in the Senate, and we've got to stop it. This is a sinister bill. It is sinister because it gives ASIO massively expanded powers to grab anyone they like off the street, including children as young as 14, to interrogate them without the right to silence and without the protection of the courts. And if you don't talk to ASIO, you can be jailed for 5 years. And if you tell anyone you've been interrogated, you can be jailed for up to 5 years. These kinds of powers should not exist in a democracy, especially in the hands of a secret intelligence agency, because you're essentially turning them into a secret police. We gave ASIO these powers 23 years ago, and at the time they were enormously controversial. Simon Crean, the leader of the opposition in those days, accused John Howard, who put up the bill then, of establishing a police state. The Liberal Party politician David Jull, who was the chair of the John Howard's government's own inquiry that looked into this bill, he actually warned it had the potential to undermine democracy. And the young member for Grainleg went into Parliament and gave a fiery speech against these powers, and he quoted Adolf Hitler's Reichsmarshal, Hermann Goering, in his speech as he likened them to the Nazis. And the member for Grainler is the same one as today, a certain Anthony Albanese. And of course that's more than ironic, because Anthony Albanese is now the Prime Minister, and he's the one who's putting up this bill to massively expand ASIO's powers. Instead of expanding ASIO's powers, we should be holding ASIO to account for the stuff-ups, the failures that led to the Bondi terrorist attack. And right there, you actually start to see a real problem, because our government is not holding ASIO to account. It's giving them these extra powers. It's essentially rewarding them. But worse than that, it's also covering up ASIO's role in that terrorist attack. And remember, that's why we gave them these powers in the first place. A few weeks ago, the Albanese government denied a visa to an ASIO agent who in February this year went on Four Corners and said he had warned ASIO about the two shooters at Bondi. And at first they listened to him, and then they started to ignore him because their focus was not on terrorism, it was on foreign interference. And that led ASIO to allow these guys to accumulate an arsenal of weapons, travel to known terrorist hotspots for training, and of course come back and commit the terrorist attack. That gentleman was supposed to testify before the Bondi Royal Commission, and instead he's been denied a visa to come to Australia so he can do that. The government is covering this up. We should be outraged at this, and we should certainly not allow them to give ASIO, this agency, even more powers. Call your senators this week and demand they reject these powers.
Well, this week the Senate is set to debate the ASIO Amendment number 2 bill. You might have heard discussion about this bill many weeks or a few months back. Basically, this bill is set to increase and extend the extraordinary powers given to ASIO many years ago, decades ago in fact, but it's going to expand them and expand the definition of adult questioning matter, something that the intelligence services can use in order to bring someone in and question them. And one of the new categories is the concept of promoting communal violence. I've no idea what that means, but this is going to simply expand the reasons for somebody coming in and being compulsorily questioned by the security services. It retains all of the powers to allow children as young as 14 to be questioned as well, and it provides no real ability for legal representation. And these are all fundamental matters for the rule of law, which should be addressed. They are simply extraordinary powers. This is an absolutely unacceptable expansion of those powers. I won't be supporting this bill, and in fact I'll be supporting any amendment that waters this down, because Australians deserve better than this. We're all for national security, but national security can't come at the expense of these sorts of powers creeping in and becoming something that they shouldn't be. So I won't be supporting this bill. Stay tuned for more details.
Canada is now killing autistic people against their parents' will. A father is going to court right now trying to stop his 27-year-old daughter from being put on MAID. His own daughter, who has autism, and doctors already signed off on it. And check this out. The doctors who approved this have no explanation for MAID qualification.
So, Dear Canada, Part 2. I took a lot of flack, a lot of hate mail, a lot of hate DMs about a video I did a couple weeks ago called Dear Canada, where I introduced to you that a study had been done and released in February of 2025 about the possibility of Canada introducing non-voluntary MAID for people like the Indigenous people, elderly, the mentally ill, those sorts of things. And everybody was like, oh, this isn't true. Even though the study did say that it was not ethical, they did predict that it could save over $1 trillion. And now you see that not only in your country are they able to just declare you mentally ill and then decide what medical treatment you get. Like, for instance, if you would speak out against the government, they could just declare you mentally ill and commit you. And then they are in charge of your medical treatment, likely including MAID in the near future. And now we find out that they are literally against the parents' wishes trying to kill this man's daughter because she has autism. For those of you that are going to say this is not true, I fact-checked it, so you go ahead and do so also. But, dear Canadians, you need to stand up. You are already slaves. They've already taken all of your guns. They've already done everything for you. I do not understand how you have people in your military that are not sticking up for you at this point. But you need to do something, because you are absolutely slaves, and they are going to start deciding which one of you gets to live and which one of you gets to die, and the reasons why. I hope you all have a good day.
We're also adding categories for candidates with work experience in transport occupations, including pilots, aircraft mechanics, and inspectors. We've identified these sectors as areas in critical need. Strengthening those helps us move goods across the country and to new markets, supporting trade, supply chains, and economic resilience. And finally, we are creating a new category for skilled military recruits to attract highly skilled foreign military applicants. Eligible recruits with a job offer from the Canadian Armed Forces, including doctors, nurses, pilots, can be invited to apply for permanent residence. They will be subject to the same security and all military requirements. This new category will support our government's commitment to strengthen our armed forces, to defend our sovereignty, and to keep Canadians safe. This category and other priority categories supports Canada's defence industrial strategy, which Prime Minister Carney announced yesterday.
Thank you to everyone who buys me a coffee. Thank you.
Dad, there's a monster under my bed. Can I sleep in your room?
Look, it's you he's after. Why make him my problem as well?
Hello. I found a suitcase that has a fox and 4 cubs inside.
Are they moving?
I'm not sure, but it would explain the suitcase.
When women get older, they collect more pets. I think it's called many paws or something.
My new deodorant said remove cap and push up bottom. Now I can hardly walk, but when I fart it smells lovely.
That's all, folks.